everybody. Welcome to the DIY Chameleon Guys podcast, video, whatever the heck this is. Hello, James.
Hey, Bill. How's it going?
It's going great. James, you know what? I just keep hearing about your name on social media. You've kind of turned into a star.
How did that happen? I'm just a
I,
guy in a garage with some chameleons.
I don't
Building
know,
stuff.
but you seem pretty popular. People are asking me, so, you know what? What's James Cross really like? And I say, you know what? I it's hard to explain. You just got to experience his presence. That's all it is. Can't help you any more
uh,
than that.
just a humble dude that likes helping people and loves chameleons.
And you're recognized in Home Depot. I mean,
Yeah.
geez.
Getting out there. Can you believe it?
Well, we're going to take advantage of that.
Okay.
And today we're going to be continuing our discussion on painting, and we're going to be talking about techniques and how we are going to actually execute a painting job. For those who are just joining us, last episode we talked about paint, brushes, and some of the equipment you need for painting. Today we're going to be talking about, once we have that, how do we start painting a cage? And so, James, you ready to talk about painting?
I guess I am.
Okay. Well, once again, I'm going to be asking questions from the perspective of somebody who has done this a number of times and isn't so sure he's done it right. So
Mm.
we're going to start off. First of all, we talked about we talked about doing a primer first and then doing paint. Do we paint before we assemble all the parts to our cage, or do we paint after we've assembled the cage?
So that's a great question. And I think you can do both. Personally, myself, it depends on what I'm doing. If it's going to be super hard to get into nooks and crannies to paint to do things, I have a tendency to set my whole stuff up outside and literally just paint all the parts. And you can even get it to the point where you're just painting the raw lumber before you ever start assembling. And that is a great way of doing this. When you're trying to be productive and you're on a time crunch and you want to get it done quickly, nothing better than that approach to doing it.
Okay. Which approach? You mean doing it in pieces, or
Painting it ahead, painting your lumber, raw lumber. You pull it off the truck, you set it on the sawhorses, you paint it all up, get your
okay?
colors going,
You mean
and then what
before
I'll
you
do
cut
is,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
that's generally when I'm doing a project, especially if I'm building something for somebody else and I'm trying to be productive. It takes a lot of the extra time factor out of doing that. Then when I'm done with the project, all I have to do is just touch up what I've damaged during the process. Little sandpaper, little paint, I'm ready to go.
Okay. So I have a bunch of 2x3s, 2x4s, 4x4s, and I paint them, but then I cut them, and then so I have this open end.
Raw edge.
When do I touch that up?
Well, is it going together? That's what I'm saying. So let's say you cut a raw edge and you're making a 45 miter for your door. Well, you're not going to need to paint that.
Okay.
You're going to want to put it together, put your glue, screw your nails to it, and then paint the top edge, right? Because we're going to want that wood to bond.
Oh, yeah. So if we want to glue it, we shouldn't be painting it.
So we don't want that edge that we're going to glue together. We don't want that to have paint on it because it's just going to separate.
Okay. Okay. And what is the and so once we get the cage together, should we just do another coat?
Usually what I do is at that point, I'll go in and do my filling, sanding, caulking. You may, when you're doing paint grade stuff, you're going to do a lot of that kind of extra, fill in all the little cracks, little joints. Yeah. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint it.
Okay.
And there's several ways you can paint it. You can do it with your roller. I don't know if I have. Let's see if I got it over here. Another technique that we didn't talk about last week. There it is. Ugh. Ever seen one of these?
uh, I've seen them. Looks like a paint airbrush.
Okay, so this right here is where you put your paint. Okay, this is called an um, high pressure, low volume (HVLP). What this does, this hooks up to your compressor. You want to get a really slick finish. This guy is the guy to do it. And these are about 39 bucks at Home Depot. So they're not
Okay.
super expensive. You don't have to go out and buy the one for a car. Um, it works off of high pressure and it puts out a low volume of paint. So it's not going to go quick, but it will go beautifully. And when you lay it down with um, this sprayer, you end up with a super slick finish. Takes to the roller. You know, I know you've seen with a roller, Bill, you always have a little bit of a speckling. It gives
Yes.
a little bit of texture with a roller. You will have nothing but a straight, clear finish with this guy.
Okay. All right. Do you do anything with pressure treated lumber? Do you sand it? Do you prime it, paint it, anything?
So usually what happens with the pressure treated lumber is when you make that cut, sometimes you end up with an interior spot that didn't quite get that material all the way through.
Yep.
Um, and then the other thing is over a long period of time, if you have any problems like I do with hard water, generally the spots where the water drips, you'll get those hard water deposits. For me, I will use a dark brown exterior stain to touch those spots up. When I'm done cutting and assembling, I'll also use that. And that's a good time for your, where did that guy go? Sponge, sponge brush,
Sponge brush.
sponge brush square bob.
All
Just
right.
use this, you just use this guy to dip in your stain and you can touch up all of those nice spots. So generally, no, I do not do much to the exterior cage because we're using that brown, what they call nature's wood, and it's already stained for you. So a little bit of touching up here and there every once in a while. Maybe you got to sand a corner and you sand off the brown. You can just touch it up with the
Okay.
exterior stain.
All right. Now, James, you might be surprised to learn this, but I actually pay attention to what goes on in these episodes. And way back in episode 1, we talked about wood having different moisture levels when you purchase it. How does the moisture level of the wood that we have play into our decision as to when to paint it?
It's a very key factor. Um, Remember in that first episode, I told you I buy that material sometimes, that pressure treated lumber, and I bring it home and I stack it up in my driveway and I don't look at it for another 3 weeks
Yeah.
because I'm letting that moisture content come out of that lumber. So if I'm going to be doing an exterior project or an exterior cage that I plan on painting, I'm definitely going to let that pressure treated lumber completely dry out as much as I possibly can.
Okay.
You need warm conditions. You can't have a lot of humidity. Um, and you want to make sure that you maybe put some sticks in between it to allow the air to go around the lumber and allow it to dry out. It's very important. If we're going to be doing an interior project, generally a lot of the wood products that we buy are already down to, 5 or 10% moisture content. It's not really going to be an issue. What will happen is if you have too much moisture in your lumber and you paint it, it's going to bubble. Basically, what will happen is that moisture is going to try to escape. You've tried to trap it with the paint, and now your paint's going to bubble and it's going to end up peeling and flaking off.
Okay. So, for the people who are doing this for the first time, and we encourage everybody, if you have just started off and you're doing this for the first time, excellent, do it. This is, you got to start. And as James says, just build it.
Build it.
So, uh, say we've got somebody who is just building it for the first time. How do you tell how much moisture is in your wood and when that moisture is gone so you can paint it?
Well, It's that comes with years of experience. I hate to say that, but I can kind of tell just by looking at the lumber. I can feel the weight of the lumber. Um, I can tell when I'm sanding or drilling into it. Um, that kind of gives me a clue of how much moisture content is in there. Like I was saying before, most of the interior finished plywoods and hardwoods that you buy off the shelf, it's already been pre-dried. But you can also look at there's a name. It's called kiln dried, and what they
Mhm.
do is they'll actually run that lumber through a kiln and dry it. So what you're going to find is any kind of exterior framing material, such as pressure treated or 2x4s. Most of that stuff's still going to have a lot of water content in it. When you get into your plywood, your 1x3s, your red or your oak and pine clean boards that you buy at Home Depot, all of that stuff's going to be pretty much pre-dried, so you really don't have to worry about that kind of situation.
Okay. Do we need to sand our wood before painting it?
There's a couple of factors there. Let me see. Okay, it just depends on the lumber you're buying, really.
Well,
So this is
James
a
has all sorts of things in that garage of
this
his.
is going to be your standard two by type material. Okay, and you can see how rough it is. It's very porous. One side is a little smoother than the other side because that's the side that they rip. Um, so that right there, you're going to want to sand that. Here's a piece of material that's pressure treated lumber. Okay, and as you can see, that's the inside if I cut it in half. So this is what we were talking about adding that extra stain to.
Hmm.
Um, and then you can see the holes on this. If you sand this outside, you're going to take that finish off of it. So I would just leave this alone.
Okay.
This material here, and this is the solid pine that you can buy. It's called Select Pine. It's really nice and square. It comes very straight, and it's already pretty darn smooth. So in this stuff, I would probably only what's called break the edge. I don't want a sharp edge ever because it'll cut you somewhere down the road, and it just smooths out the product itself. So this here, I would just do a light sand on, and it's ready for paint.
Okay. Okay. So, what else do we need to prepare for if we're going to be painting a cage? We touched on tape and drop cloth. So, with that in mind, we go to Home Depot. We want our shopping list. What things do we need to make sure that we come away with? And I'm asking this because when you start thinking about, oh, how am I going to open the paint can when I get home? Just stupid stuff like that. that that
Okay.
makes you take another trip. Actually, I've had screwdrivers all over the place, but not everybody has screwdrivers all over the place.
So, yeah, you're right, Bill. It's open that paint can. You're just going to need a screwdriver.
Yeah, because we
I
love the
use this
first
little
time
guy.
DIYers, and we're going to help you get started off with as little paint as possible.
What's neat about the newer paints is you actually don't have to. And I've got an old one here.
Of course you do.
Of course I do.
Of course you do.
Good old my favorite place, Home Depot. They uh they got smart. Started helping us DIYers. Can you see that little
Oh
circle on
yeah.
it? And it's just a twist off lid.
Oh, I've not seen that.
So this guy just literally twists on and off. So you don't need that screwdriver anymore.
Wait, so does the whole top come off still?
This will come off. Yes, you can still
Okay.
pry it off, but in the center of the can,
Is that
it
big enough to
actually
get your?
has a twisty that you just
Uh,
spin off.
because if you do that, then you need a container to pour paint in, right?
I do. I use a paint tray. And then I usually buy a metal one in the beginning, and then I buy the liners for it because, like I said before, I don't like to clean. So when I'm done, I just toss the paint tray away and get another one. But I use the big metal paint tray itself, and then I just put a liner on top of it. And I think I have those here too.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
What don't I have in this garage?
Yeah, well, we haven't found it yet.
Okay, this is old and used one, but at least it'll give you an idea. So
Oh, yeah.
so these are the trays, and this is a metal paint tray.
Okay.
And you just set right in there, do your painting. When you're done, no cleaning at all. Toss this puppy right in the trash.
Okay.
One
All right.
other thing you might want to think about when you're at Home Depot, you got nail holes. You're going to have edges, and you're going to have maybe a crack in the wood, or so you're gonna need to do some puttying and sanding. Especially if you don't spend the money on the good lumber, it's already going to come with knots and holes. So there's a couple of products that I like to use. I'm sure there's millions of these out there, but this is the stuff I like to use. This stuff is called plastic wood.
Okay.
Okay. And this product is really cool because it's very pliable right out of the tub. And what's neat about it is it once you put it on, you almost don't need to sand. You can literally rub the material off, and it will fill your hole. Um, and you can almost sand it with your finger.
So
And it dries within maybe 30 minutes. You're ready to actually do your final sanding.
it looks like
Um,
peanut butter. What does it feel like?
it feels like peanut butter. It feels
Okay.
like chalky peanut butter is what it feels like
And so
without the
you just
nuts.
take a dollop of it and you just rub it across on your wood, and it just
Exactly. You just literally will stick this in your holes or fill it in your cracks. If you got a big section, let's say you've got a divot that you want to fill, so I'll get out a putty knife and
okay.
scrape it across the top of it, and within you know it's literally less than 30 minutes. You'll be able to paint. You'll be able to paint.
Okay.
Now, let's say you got fine finish, you got done, and you were like, "Oh man, I didn't fill that paint hole. I didn't fill that hole. Um, I need to. I don't want to repaint everything." So, Verithane's come out with these really awesome pre-colored putties that never really set up. So, what's cool about this stuff is it's always soft, and it never. I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. It never really sets up. Can you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is great for filling, even if you've got furniture in your house and let's say you damaged it. You went by and put a gouge in it and you got a little hole. You can match these colors, and this stuff is super pliable, and you can mold it to fill back in. So
Okay.
it's another great product for, and it comes just a multitude of colors. So this is after you're done and you need to do some puttying. This stuff is really great. And then of
Okay.
course we use our caulking for everything else. Then the last thing that we forgot to talk about that I can remember off the top of my head is my best friend for oil paste thinner, lacquer thinner.
Lacquer thinner.
So this will clean anything pretty much. Be smart about it. Do a little test spot. But I've been able to get some pretty gnarly stuff off my product. And what's nice about this stuff too is you can take this, put on a rubber glove, put your silicone bead in, take a dip of this on your finger, and then when you wipe the silicone, it won't stick to the glove, It won't
Oh,
stick to the wall, and it gives you a super smooth edge. So that's another great little trick.
interesting. Lacquer thinner. All right. All right.
It's it's one of my super tricks. And then here's another great product. You probably never heard of this.
Goof off. Well, of course. I love that stuff.
Uh, and it kind of reminds me of me because I'm a big goof off.
That gets rid of stickers and stuff.
It'll get rid of adhesives, glues. Um, you spill it on the carpet, you get it on your pants, and you need to get it off. Goof off is just it's the trick.
Okay. So let's go through a scenario. And I just wanted to go through the steps you take to paint your cage. And I want to do this because I know what I have done for the last 20, 30 years. But I want to ask just for you, raw, without you having any background information on what I've done and what everybody else has done. What do you do to do a paint project from start to finish?
First thing I do is get my paint. Second thing I'll do is get my cage, get it ready, get it prepped. That means sanding, filling, uh, cleaning. Once I get it to the last edge, I use what's called cheesecloth, and I'll wipe down the whole project to make sure I've got all my dust and particulates off of the wood, and then it's time to start masking. If I'm going to do two different colors, or I want to protect something from getting painted, like wheels or handles, I'm going to make sure I tape all of that stuff off. Um, and then, depending on which way I go, if I'm going to spray it, being as I'm out here in the country, I clear a spot out there in the driveway because it's dirt. And I put down a big tarp, and now I roll out my cabinet. I'm going to get my sprayer out, and I'm going to go ahead and put a coat on it and let it stand until it gets just past dry. Not, maybe not really dry, but tacky. And I'm going to go ahead and put another coat on it. I usually will do two coats. Now, when it comes to painting with a roller and a brush, well, that usually project is a little bit less messy. I don't have any overspray. So I'm going to bring that back in the garage, and I'm going to turn on Matlock and get my coffee. And I'm going to roll and watch TV. And it's a little easier to do for a non-professional to roll and paint with a paintbrush than it is to spray.
Okay.
Um, because spraying takes a little bit of practice. You've got to be fluent. You've got to be able to do the right amount of overlap, and you don't want to drips. You don't want to go too heavy. Too plus, you don't want any particulates in the air, and then all the paint gets airborne. It's a beautiful finish when you use the air sprayer, but it's a lot more practice to get it
Okay.
right.
Now, we talked about doing one coat of primer and then you're talking about two coats of paint.
Correct.
And so, how long? Obviously, you need to let the primer dry and then the first coat of paint dry and the second coat. How long does this take?
On a warm day, you could probably finish it throughout the day. It would probably take you a couple of hours.
Okay.
On a cool day, it could take you a week.
All right.
Um, but I like to make sure that my primer is good and set up. My paint itself, I will let it get pretty close to dry before I put another coat on, but I can put another coat on fairly quickly on the second coat.
Okay. So, okay. So we're now past the second coat, and is now the time that we can start assembling the cage.
Yep. Well, we've got the cage assembled. I thought we were painting it in place.
Are well,
Oh, we're gonna
maybe we ought to clear that up. Are we painting the pieces? Uh,
now painting the pieces is another different situation. Now with that, I'm just gonna go out there and I'm gonna put my primer on. I'm gonna wait till that sets up, and then I'm gonna as soon as all my paint is dry and I start assembling it, then I'm gonna have to go back in and do all my caulking and sanding and filling afterwards, and then we'll go back to that same process that I just went through, basically doing the final coat.
Okay. And then everything's together. We do the final coat. Is there? Oh well. Okay. Now let's just touch on cleanup first. So is that as simple as, well? It's water-based paint, so you just
So if you use a water-based paint, yes, you're just literally going to for me, what I like to do is I'll get some paper or something because I won't pour all the paint out into my tray. Um, and what I'll do is I'll just leave it out and let that paint. I'll thin it out and let that paint dry in the tray before I roll it up and toss it. I don't want wet paint in my trash can. As far as my brushes go, if they're cheap ones, I let them dry out, toss them in the trash. And water-based paint, all you got to do is just go in and wash your hands off. When it comes to oil-based paints, you're going to want to get your good old friend, Mr. Lacquer Thinner. You're going to want to be in a very well ventilated area. And I'm going to just pour a little bit in the bottom of a bucket to clean my brushes. And I'm just going to push that down in and out of that lacquer thinner until the brush is pretty much clear. Then I'm going to dump that out and probably try to do it one more time with a clear brush and then do the toe, hit it on the end of my
Mhm.
boot to draw anything out of it.
Okay. Is there anything that we need to maintain the paint job over the months/years?
If you used a good paint, you used a good primer. I've got a couple of cages I've painted 4 or 5 years ago. They need nothing. They've held up very well. Of course, I didn't paint the interiors of them. I used Flex Seal.
Of course. So,
So Flex Seal now comes in white.
oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm about to make a decision on that because I'm going to be buying some Flex Seal for the first time in my life. Uh, okay. I think that pretty much covers the question about painting. Is there anything that I should ask that I didn't ask?
um, I don't think so. I think
All
we
right.
touched pretty much all of it.
So I am a
But what about you
thorough
guys
and
out there? Is there any
well-educated
questions you
interviewer.
have?
What was that?
I said, what about the people out there? Is there any questions you have?
Well, that's a good question. If anybody out there has a question about painting, and as you see, I asked very basic questions, and these are questions that I actually had. A lot of times I do interviews with a subject that I'm very knowledgeable about, so I know which questions to ask. No, this was something where I literally wanted to know all these questions, and so I'm up here saying I know nothing. And so I'm sure if you're just started off with your DIY project, you may be having the same very basic questions that sound like, quote, stupid questions that people would say, you don't know that? Well, that's why you come to the DIY guy, Chameleon guys, because I'm going to ask those questions. And if you have any questions that we didn't answer here, put them in the comments. We read the comments and we will happily integrate whatever questions come in. We'll either answer them in the comments or integrate them into a future episode because we want to help you get up and do these projects. So, all right, James, I think we need to call it a day. If there was one thing that you wanted to leave the entire viewing, listening audience with, what would it be?
Just build it.
All right, everybody, we'll see you later.